Hello and welcome to a very exciting coding walkthrough for Fortitude 1.2, the latest game update. Well, I suppose it's the latest for me, it won't be the latest for you because you'll be watching at the end when it's all done and polished. Fingers crossed anyway. But yeah, it's quite an exciting update because this one comes with the biggest narrative event yet, the Sentient Bacteria event. If you don't know what that is, then I would suggest reading the design document because I'm not going to go through the entire thing now. But basically, it's an event that occurs when you set down on a particular planet in the game. It's Diadem for this. It was initially another moon, but it's Diadem for the full game, just because simplicity. Um, and basically, what happens when you set down on this moon, planet rather, is you get out and wander about, and then the ship starts giving you proximity warnings that kind of occur as time goes on, and they get a bit more intense as time goes on as well. Like it'll go proximity warning, then it'll go proximity warning. There's something nearby to the ship, not the player, and then it'll go. There's organisms nearby and hostile organisms, and it'll get really, really worked up. And the idea behind that is it's supposed to worry you to the point where you've got to run back to the ship. But you get to the ship and you find there's nothing there, and no sign of whatever the hell it was talking about. So but I recommended you evacuate, so you leave anyway, and when you get into space, that's when things start going wrong. The ship starts malfunctioning, you hear funny noises, and all in, it's just a pretty, well, at least I think, it's a pretty scary event. And it's the kind of the culmination of the game because you found this like sentient bacteria that's infected your ship, and you've got to then transport it to Alcaloda, the Mars planet, while at the same time fighting all the malfunctions from the ship. And then this part isn't in this version, but it will be in the final game. When you eventually set down on Alcaloda, if you manage to make it that far, you then bring the sentient bacteria to the ancient ruins, which then activates the final game event where you meet the aliens and complete the game. This all, of course, has to be done before before the rogue planet arrives. Otherwise, you're gonna die. This is how you win the game, basically. So what I'll do is the same thing I do in every single one of these videos. I'll hit play, and I'll guide you through the update, and then go through the code. Another big thing that's been added this week, actually, is controller support. So you can probably hear there, that is the sound of a controller joystick. Just skip the tutorial because I went through that last week. Oh, sorry, that was a Facebook message. But anyway, so the first thing you might notice is that the game now has a new UI system. It's gonna to try and fade out this old UI up here, which is just ugly as hell. So just pretend this bit in the corner doesn't exist, because velocity is now displayed here, and it's like a dynamic UI, so it stays with the ship. So if you land the ship like this, and you then walk that way, the counter stays with the ship, and also it rotates depending on which way you're pointing, and generally it's just quite a cool little mechanic. So what we'll do is we'll press the down on the D-pad. Actually, before we continue, this is a list of all the controls for the controller. So you've got things like left trigger for engaging thrust, and stick and Y and all these ones. I'll just leave this up for a second if you want to pause it and read that, but otherwise, we shall continue. Oh yeah, and that's the other thing. If you increase time or decrease time, it shows up here, but only when time is more than normal. If time is just at normal points, go sit, thank you. And then it just disappears. Because it's all about minimal UI, because that was the thing that we wanted in the design document. So I'll just toggle the UI a bit. You can toggle it off, or you can toggle that. Yeah, there's 3 different settings here. Oops, I've accidentally timescaled. Fully on, half on, and off. So fully on has got the the red trajectory line that you can now see at all times. We just zoom out into the map. You can see we are now approaching the planet of Diadem. Let's boost up time a bit. Spin that way so that we are on course. We're lagging a bit, I do apologise. That's just the editor being mean as usual. Weirdly enough, we get solid 60 in a full rendered game, so... Oops.
Navigational systems offline.
Apologies for that. Apparently OBS decided I didn't want to record game audio, and I think I might actually die because I was busy changing audio settings rather than, piloting the ship. So yeah, that's another thing actually. Diadem now has the full surface designs that have been made by Josh, and also the rogue planets in the sky now. Since it's a moon-like planet and basically doesn't have any atmosphere, there's no wind, so landing on this one is a lot easier than landing on like El Coloda, which has got like a full atmosphere and storms and things like that. This one is easy, or easy-ish. I still struggle with it sometimes. Right, so we'll just touch down lightly, and you might notice as well the distance counter is now here. This, however, only appears when you are landing. So that, again, keeping that minimal aesthetic that I was talking about earlier. So we're now quite close to the ground, 20 meters, so I'll just slow it down. Look at these. I really have to say that Josh has done a fantastic job with these designs. It really looks like a moon, or like the kind of moon-like aesthetic you'd expect from a planet like this. And it's so cool. I just love them. Right, so let's carefully set her down on this flat bit here. Just gonna turn that line off because it's irritating me. God, I'm not landing particularly well.
Autopilot engaged.
Oh, nice little flip there.
Autopilot disengaged. Autopilot
I've
engaged.
not brought my A game to this landing. Here we go. Nice. So yep, you can now land. Well, I mean, you can land before, but you can now land on the surface. And we can boost off. I believe this timer thing was in the last update. Basically, when you boost off, you only get a certain amount of time before it then disables itself. But I've bumped up the numbers a bit so you actually fly around. So it's actually fun to traverse the terrain. Just imagine you're hearing like a rocket noise when we blast off. It's very fun to traverse this, I have to say. There's the ship down there. And yeah, so the idea is you touch down on this planet and you wander about for a bit. Now there is actually a timer going at the moment. Yeah, we're on 88. I need you to be at about 200. Yeah, that works. Just because otherwise we're going to be here all day. But the idea is basically after a certain amount of time has passed, things then start happening. So you're just pottering around on Diadem, exploring, having a bit of a laugh. Pointy rocks. I'd bump the timescale, but I can't because you can't timescale when you're on the surface of a planet. Which makes complete sense, but obviously is not very helpful for our coding walkthrough here. I have to say though, it is very fun, just blasting about.
Proximity alert.
There we go, so that's the first sign that things are like not as they seem. Let's head up here. Like with El Coloda, this terrain is also infinite. So if we zoom out, we're just kind of flying about, and then once you hit one of the edges, it then transports you to the other side.
Proximity alert.
To give the impression that the terrain's infinite, because it completely loops. Like Josh has designed it in such a way that each end matches up with the other. So basically, you'll never reach the end of the end of the terrain. Just zooming out occasionally just to see where I am. Zooming out is a bit of a cheat actually. I'm just engaging autopilot.
Unidentified organism detected in Fortitude proximity. Assistance required.
See how it's now.
Proximity alert.
Yeah, we hear you. It's now telling you about an organism, so you might start to get worried now. You're like, what is going on? You know. Where are we anyway? Ah, that's the cave.
Warning. Multiple potentially hostile organisms detected. Evacuation recommended.
Oh, now it's telling you to evacuate, so you're quaking in your boots. Maybe I should get out of here. Maybe I should. Yeah, I think this is where we landed, actually. So notice how we've come completely full circle. We've been heading left this entire time. And now, there's the ship. So now you're like, this sounds bad, let's
Warning.
evacuate.
Multiple potentially hostile organisms detected. Evacuation recommended.
You're heeding its warning. Off we go. Let's enable that line. And blast off into the stratosphere. That rogue planet's slowly getting bigger and bigger. Don't think I don't see you. And the timer is now at 11 minutes, so you got 50 minutes until the planet hits.
Warning. Multiple potentially hostile organisms detected. Evacuation recommended.
Now we're in the upper atmosphere now because it's finished. Can't speed this up, otherwise I would. This
Leaving
isn't
upper
important
atmosphere.
bit.
Navigational systems restored.
Alright, so now that we're outside of Diadem's atmosphere, we've left, things start to get a bit... This is where the secondary... Oops.
Alert. System malfunction.
This is where things start to get a bit wacky. So there's a system malfunction. Notice the ship is now spinning on its own. Don't know if you can hear that. But now there's a spooky breathing noise. So yeah, things are starting to get scary now. Because there's obviously something in the ship with you. And it's fiddling with your systems.
Losing power.
Oh,
Losing power.
it's killing the power.
Recommended destination. El Calauda.
And the AI
Power
is also
restored.
telling you
Rebooting
to go to El
systems.
Calauda.
Losing power.
Yeah, it's
Losing power.
basically oh god. Sorry, I thought switched that there. But anyway, obviously your salvation lies within El Calauda, so I thought it was just best to just get the AI to just tell you to go to
Power
El
restored.
Calauda.
Rebooting systems.
Because maybe that's like, there's obviously a lot of mystery surrounding the aliens and things like that in this game, so I was like, you could just pass it off as the aliens communicating through the
Alert.
ship's AI.
Detecting nearby
something like
orbital
that.
debris.
Leave out for
Caution
gosh.
is advised.
Orbital debris? Where? Oh, there is an asteroid field near here actually. Alright, it's rotating the ship. Gotta counter that. Excellent. Let's bump the timescale again. We are now approaching El Calauda rather
Alert.
rapidly.
System malfunction.
And it's rotating. Now we're going at 236 meters per second. That's a bit too fast. We want to be slowing right down. Yeah, basically you got to get to El Calauda while battling all of these like various malfunctions.
Recommended destination.
Yeah, see,
El Calauda.
it's telling you to go to El Calauda again. Now it's doing the rotation. Basically, the way this bit works is that there's 5 like pre-programmed events that can occur, 5 malfunctions, and the game then picks from this list randomly, completely randomly, in order to decide how the ship's going to act. So the randomness kind of makes it replayable,
Alert.
obviously. And
Thrusters firing unexpectedly. Cause unknown.
I apologise if the ship's AI voice is really loud. I've turned it up a bunch so you can hear the noises, but I think it might actually be louder than me. Can't really tell. The volume's weird with this thing.
Alert. System malfunction. Recommended.
Destination.
Ooh, it's starting to bug out.
Calauda.
Yeah, the ship's AI is starting to malfunction now. We are on approach to Alcaloda. So we're nearly there. I'm actually surprised we've gotten this far. But yeah, it's one of, as I was saying, it's one of 5 kind of malfunctioning events. And these are random thrusters, random rotation, ejecting you from the ship, that's fun, random autopilot, and random loss of power. Come on. It's not letting me timescale. Gotta love game bugs. Let me timescale. What is up with that? Sorry, just one second. The problem with implementing things on this scale is that there's always some bugs. Event time's on 58.
Autopilot engaged.
Oh, yep, that's a random autopilot. And that means we can timescale. Yes!
Losing power.
Oh, God, we're
Losing power.
So yeah, it really messes with your systems, this AI. Oh, God, we're in a spin. An uncontrollable spin.
Power restored. Rebooting systems.
As I said, these are entirely random. Yeah, I apologise because this video is probably going to be quite long. And they're only going to get longer as I add bigger and larger updates, like story things. Because I've got to go through them. But obviously, if you just want the code, then you can skip through to the end. This is kind of a walkthrough and a coding thing now. Right, we are approaching.
Alert. System malfunction.
Oh, another malfunction. Rotational this time. Slow that down, counteract it so it doesn't spin us out into oblivion. And let's boost up that time again. Yeah, we're nearly there now.
Losing power. Losing power.
Ooh.
Alert.
Another power loss.
System malfunction. Power restored.
I love that.
Rebooting systems.
Oh, I've just realised we're actually going up ridiculously
Alert.
quickly.
Thrusters firing unexpectedly.
No, bad time
Cause
to do that.
unknown.
That's a bad time to do that. Stop. Oh, God, stupid AI. I do love this event, but it can be quite irritating at points.
Entering upper atmosphere and compensating for
Just hope it
orbital
doesn't kick me out of
rotation.
the ship.
Alert. Navigational systems offline.
1,000 meters to the ground. I should point out at this point that I have not successfully managed to land while during the sentient bacteria event in any of my playtesting sessions.
Alert. Thrusters firing unexpectedly.
It always does the
Cause
worst
unknown.
possible, like, random event in the worst possible time. Like kicking me out of the ship. It did that once when I was about 100 meters off the ground and I died. So close. Yeah, obviously this does need a bit of tweaking, as playtesting has shown, but the basic fundamental like building blocks are there, which is good. Right, well, we've hit clouds. That's a start. Look how big that rogue planet is in the sky now. It's been nearly half an hour. We're nearly halfway through the game. He's only got
Autopilot engaged. Autopilot disengaged.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have just witnessed the first landing ever to occur during the sentient bacteria event during a playtest. Hope you're pleased. I certainly am. I certainly am. But yeah, sorry about the lengthy walkthrough there, but that is the sentient bacteria event in its entirety. Basically, you land on Diadem, get infected, and then you have to kind of battle your malfunction as you make your way to Alcaloda and pray that it doesn't break your ship before you land. And then this part isn't, as I said, in the game yet, but you then take the bacteria to the ruins. That initiates the final event of the game. if you make it that far, that is. Um, so yeah, I'll just go through the sentient bacteria script because it is the biggest, as you can see, the biggest part of this update, and basically where most of my time went. So up here we have a series of booleans. The two major events, which is the surface one that takes place on the surface of diagram, and then event 2, which is all the randomized events in space, and the transitioning between the two. And these are all the 5 different events: random thrust, rotation, losing power, ejecting the player, and autopilots. And then also these are all the various audio clips that have been made as a result of the update. You know, things like proximity detected and things like that. Also, fun fact: the weird noises that you hear while you're flying around in the ship are actually the normal ship AI voice clips, just slowed really, really far down to the point where they're unrecognizable, and they sound really creepy. I kind of accidentally discovered that while I was fiddling around with Audacity this week, and yeah, it's pretty cool. But in terms of code, we have then got a few simple bits here, which basically goes: if you're within Diadem's atmosphere, i.e., if you're in Diadem, and you have just touched the ground, because this event only starts once you touch the ground on Diadem, then begin event 1 is true. If begin event 1 is true, i.e. that event's already happening, and you haven't yet transitioned into the second one, but you're not landing anymore, so you've taken off and exited Diadem's atmosphere, then event 1 no longer occurs. The time boolean gets set to, time float rather, gets set to 0, and the event transition boolean gets set to true. So you're transitioning now between the initial event and the... bit of water there, sorry. And the... oh my god, the malfunctioning event. And then you've got a little bit here that goes, has 30 seconds passed between event transition being set to true? If it has, then you're no longer transitioning and the full event occurs. And that's basically to give you a little bit of time between getting out of the atmosphere and the malfunctioning event occurring, basically. And then this little bit here that goes, if you're within alkaloided atmosphere and you touch the ground, then event 2 is no longer occurring, so the ship doesn't glitch out anymore. And so what we'll do is go through this one. So this is event 1. So if event 1 is occurring, then warnings as a function is set to true, and it starts passing time. So we'll just scroll all the way down to warnings down here. And this is pretty simple. It basically uses that time passed floats that, and this basically goes up in seconds as soon as the event begins, and basically goes, if 245 seconds have passed, so that's just under 5 minutes. If you've been piddling around on Diadem for more than 5 minutes, then play the proximity alert, ship AI sound, and then 30 seconds later play it again, and then another 30 seconds later play unidentified organism, which is basically the ship going, there's an unidentified organism nearby, and then 5 seconds later play a proximity alert just to emphasize the point, then 20 seconds later play the evacuation recommended clip, which is basically the ship going, there's too much going on here, let's get out of here. And then play that every 30 seconds for a little while until here, where it plays the same clip but distorted. So it goes like, evacuation recommended. That's a simple edit that was done on Audacity, by the way. But then play that and the proximity alert distortion, which is just proximity alert. And play those until this evacuation final one, which is basically the ship going completely like dying off. And then the ship doesn't speak again after that, leaving you wondering what's happened. So yeah, this is just a series of clips that, it's like a narrative kind of plays. So it starts off by warning you about things, and then slowly gets more and more intense, and then it starts glitching out, before finally coming to a complete silence. And silence is always the scariest thing. So yeah, that's basically event 1. And then event 2 starts happening once you exit Diadem's atmosphere. And that occurs here, it sets the events function to true. So what we've got here is a float called event select and a boolean called event selector. And what that basically does is, if an event selector is true, then event select, which is the float, um, becomes a random number between 1 and 15. And then it's set that to false. So basically what this does is it sets event select as a random number between 1 and 15. Then depending on what that number is, it will then start a corresponding event based on that number. So for example, oh, actually there's this bit as well. And then you've got random duration here, because not only are the events chosen randomly, they also last for a random amount of time. So random duration is set for a random time between 7 and 20 seconds, because that's the time between each event and how long each one can last. And then event selects various event settings are set down here. So because event select is set as a number between 1 and 15, if it ends up being 1, 3, or 5, then the random thrust event is true, so the ship randomly fires its thrusters. If event select ends up being 4, 7, or 10, then it starts randomly rotating. If it ends up being 6, 9, or 15, then it starts rotating, but the other way. If it ends up being 8, 14, or 2, then you lose power. And if it ends up being 11, so if this one's rarer, then it starts randomly engaging the autopilot. And lastly, if it ends up being 13 or 12, because 13 is really unlucky, then it ejects you from the ship. And that one didn't actually happen in that playthrough you saw earlier, because obviously it's entirely randomized, so you can get literally anything. So basically, if the number selects any one of these, the number becomes a specific number between 1 and 15, then depending on the number, it depends on which event that is then called. So if random thrust event, so if it's selected the random thrust event to occur, then set the event timer to start going up, so that basically it only lasts for a certain amount of time. Play the malfunctioning thrusters clip, which is basically the ship going, oh no, the ship's thrusters are malfunctioning. And then while event timer is less than random duration, so while this timer is less than the random duration float set earlier, between 7 and 20 seconds, then timescale is set to 1, and thrusting is set to true. As to what thrusting is, I believe it's either set down here or it's set in a different script. Yeah, it's set in space navigation, I think. But yeah, what space navigation's bit is, sorry. It's such a big script, there's so much stuff in it. Where are we? It's somewhere in there. But basically what it means is that it sets the thrusting boolean to true, and if that boolean is true, then it pushes the ship forward via the add force function in here. So this one. Yeah, look, there it is. Ship transfer sentient bacteria thrusting. So yeah, if that boolean is true, then it adds a force to basically push the ship forward. So basically it literally just activates the ship's thrusters when this random thrust event is true. And then once event timer equals random duration, so say it chose a random number like 9 seconds, then once event timer hits 9 seconds, then it stops randomly thrusting. And then it says event selected to true, so that it selects another event, basically. Although, do note as well that it says random duration plus 45F before it does that, so what that basically means is there's a 45-second gap between each random event occurring. So the player gets a little bit of a breather before all hell then breaks loose again. Similar thing here with random rotate event. Basically says is rotating to true, and if that's true, then add a torque that rotates the ship, and also make the right thruster set to true, the triangle bit on the side, so that it looks like it's actually pushing the ship around. And the same one for here, except it's the other way, so it's random rotate event 2, so it's pushing you left this time rather than right. And then if lose power, then it plays the malfunction clip that says malfunction, And then it activates the is in fuel space navigation function, which is... This is the problem with such a large game, there's so much code. Scroll down to the bottom. Yeah, but what that basically does is, because it's somewhere in there, it makes the ship's thrusters flicker and then eventually die off. And it calls, this is a function that we actually made way back in the refueling update, prototype 0.8. Because the reason why it says is in fuel is because this is what happens when you get within the fuel clouds. It starts to glitch the ship out. And we're just calling on that same function here, really. And obviously it ends after 45 seconds of grace period. And then the random autopilot event just literally sets the autopilot boolean, sets the autopilot boolean to true. And that's gained from the vehicle transition script. Yeah, see, get command vehicle transition autopilot is true. Again, it's a lot of this is just calling functions that already exist in different scripts and then activating them here. And it activates that before then disabling the event. And then finally, you've got the eject player event here, which this one's actually a little bit more complicated than the standard ones. It when the event timer is between a very, very specific number, because you've got to do it quickly, otherwise it glitches it out. This is a bit of a botch, this bit. But yeah, it sets is ejected true. Then if is ejected is true, then set the local position relative to the ship to 0. Well, it's actually at an offset, so you appear to the right hand side. Set the rotation to 0. Set the player's velocity to match the ship's velocity. Make sure they're not in the ship anymore, and that's calling on a function from like prototype 0.3, I think that was. And what that basically does is literally just kicks the player out of the ship. Again, calling on a previously established function. Then we've got a few bits here that are quite similar to how Event 1 worked. And basically it just plays random clips at various intervals, like the deep breathing sounds and the kind of horrible little slowed down vocals that I showed you earlier. Plays them at various intervals to just add to the overall scary atmosphere. And also at the same time playing the recommended destination clip, which is the ship going, go to Alcaloda, go to Alcaloda. But yeah, so that's the sentient bacteria script. I am conscious we are pressed for time, 32 minutes. God, it's the longest one so far. I'm sorry, I really am. It's just such a big game. But yeah, so we'll move swiftly on and talk about the new HUD system, which you saw earlier. I'll just do you a quick refresher. Come on. Yeah, this new velocity system here. Oh, I just dropped the timescale. Whatever. Anyway, so in order to do that, what we did was went on the main camera, I think. I've got to reread all this stuff. Ah, yeah, because it's attached to the ship, silly me. Yeah, so we just added a canvas to the ship and a little text game object down here. That text game object is then called in this part of update and basically goes, if you press H or if you press the D-pad, because now we've got double controls, and the HUD isn't already on and you're not in the map or anything like that, then enables the text so you can see the velocity and enables various booleans, and it also enables the line as well, the red line, the trajectory line. And then goes, if you're pressing H or the D-pad and the HUD is fully on, then disable the line renderer, but don't disable the text because this is the half on HUD now. And then if you press D-pad again and the HUD is on but partially, so basically you've got the text but you haven't got the line, then disable the text. And what that basically means is the HUD has got 3 settings: line and text, text and nothing. Because the line's a little bit ugly, so you can, if you want to see the velocity but not the line, you can just quickly disable it. I should point out as well all the controller changes that we've made. Basically, we've added a little OR symbol to pretty much every control where you need to press a keyboard function. So like here, for example, in space navigation, let's go up a tad, yeah, whereas you used to press just W to get the ship to move forward, you can now press the left trigger. I won't go through all of these because it's pretty simple. It's literally just a little OR thing and a get axis in this case, or get key down depending on what you're pressing, because the trigger is apparently an axis, not a button. I don't know why. And like, yeah, here again you've got the left trigger, and getting the horizontal axis, so that's the joysticks whenever you're moving left and right, and vertical axis whether you're moving down. Yeah, that's just the various controller support inputs that we've put in this week. It's just, yeah, it's an awful lot of simple code, and it took quite a while to do. Oh, I should point out as well, because I have actually forgot to demo this earlier, that the pause menu actually works completely with the new control support. So if I press the D-pad, you scroll up and down. And to achieve that, I basically had to completely break the system for PC controls, so the game is just no longer compatible with keyboard and mouse. Just because I basically had to break half of the controls in order to get them to work with a controller. God knows how these games that do dual inputs work. Like, honestly, I don't know how they do it. So yeah, gone are all those resume and restart and quit scripts from last week, and instead all the functions are here. It's basically just the whole thing is a trick, because it fools you into thinking you're highlighting something when you're actually not. And it's done that for a series of booleans. So basically, if you pause the game and you press the D-pad, then you're not hovering over resume, you're hovering over restart. And if you press the D-pad again while you're hovering over restart, then you're hovering over quit. And if you press the D-pad again while you're hovering over quit, if you press the D-pad again but go upwards this time, then you're no longer hovering over quit, you're hovering over restart. If you were hovering over restart and you press up, then you're hovering over resume. And what that basically means is it tricks you into thinking that it's like actually highlighting things, whereas it's just doing a series of booleans. Oh god, what did I just break? Ah, yeah, there we go. So look, as I was saying in the code, if you press the D-pad, it like changes the booleans to true and various bits. And then down here you've got if is resume, i.e. if you're hovering over the resume, well not hovering over, but if your current D-pad is like on the resume button, then change the color to blue so it's highlighted blue whenever you're hovering over it. And if you press the joystick button 0, which is the A key, then it basically disables the pause menu and re-enables the game by changing the timescale up. So basically it resumes the game. Again, this is just borrowing the functions from last week, just modifying them a bit for controller. Otherwise, if you're not hovering over the resume key, then change the key. If the resume button, then change the color of it back to white, so it's blue when you're hovering over it and white when you're not. And then with restart here, if you're hovering over it, change it to blue, and if you click on it, then reload the game. And you've got quit here again. If you're hovering over it, change the color to blue, and if you click on it, quit the game. And I believe that is pretty much it, because the sentient bacteria script was the big boy, the main event this week. I mean, it's a gigantic thing that took forever to make, so you can probably imagine why it's the star of the show. But yeah, I'm sorry for the 40-minute long video. Crikey. There's just so much to go through. I can't promise they're going to get shorter from now on in. But I hope you enjoyed or found it insightful at the very least. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.